Hello, my name is David Taz Rodriguez, and I encourage you to please share this video, um, whether you watch it live or you see it after the fact. As incredibly tragic and senseless as the shootings in Las Vegas have been, the plight of the Puerto Rican people has not changed, and they desperately need your help. I would like to share with you my personal experiences through journal accounts that I kept. And in hopes that the real story of Puerto Rico gets told and what's really going on there. I've seen so much news that just makes my head spin around that is not accurate. I'd like to also dedicate this piece to EvyLopez. My dance with Maria. My dance with Maria is not done, and sadly for most has just begun. The dance was long, the dance was wet, the dance was one I will never forget. 1 week ago from my writing this, I heard of Maria. This Maria, like most Marias, I suppose, started small but quickly grew until no one knew how to even describe her. She went from a well-developed tropical storm system to a Category 5 hurricane with 175-mile-per-hour sustained winds in less than 15 hours, and she was headed straight to our shores. In fact, the track of the storm was almost precision in its crossing of our island. The race to prepare was on. It was fight or flight time, and evacuating a small island with 3.5 million people on it and only 2 real commercial airports on that kind of notice is near impossible. Also, for many who either couldn't afford it or really had nowhere to go, leaving wasn't even an option. So fight it is. However, simply preparing and hunkering down is also much easier said than done when with 24 hours of real prep time in such a densely populated island trying to consume limited resources all at the same time, it just equals insanity. No parking spots or any shopping carts at any of the grocery stores. In fact, lines of people waiting to get a spot or parked along the street. The same problem began to develop at the hardware, lumber, and steel yards and gas stations. With limited time before Maria's arrival and having just opened the house back up after our brush with Irma less than 2 weeks before, I knew I needed to use my time wisely. I couldn't get bogged down with these lines for supplies without prepping my house. But unfortunately, there were supplies I desperately needed in order to properly prep the house, so I set my alarm for 4 a.m. and parked and waited for a fuel delivery at a gas station that I got a tip was getting fuel around 5 a.m. After 3 hours, I had a full tank of gas for the Pathfinder, a full tank of gas for the Rhino, and an extra 5 gallons in a gas can. I then headed over to the National Hardware store and I got 10 rolls of tape, and at Walgreens rounded out my supplies with about another week's worth of non-perishable foods. I filled our cooler with ice, and I made ice in everything that would hold water in our freezer. I filled the vessel sinks in the bathrooms and the 2 bathtubs, 3 5-gallon buckets, and another 5 gallons of drinking water. I gathered my hard hat and headlamp, 4 flashlights and extra batteries, a taser, a machete, and I made a go bag with a towel, change of clothes, razor, deodorant, toothbrush, water, a few snacks, and a picture of my beautiful wife and daughter in case at any point I needed to abandon ship. I prepared the house by sealing the inside and the outside of all the windows and doors with heavy-duty strapping tape and tying all the interior doors shut with ropes and locking all interior gates in case of a breach. I rolled large towels around pool noodles and I put them under all the doors and windows. Then I wove pool noodles between the iron window bars of the downstairs bunker, inflated the airbed for the bunker and garaged the cars, and began tracking Maria via internet and receiving prayers and well wishes via Facebook from friends and family. I called and spoke with Frank and Alicia for a bit, and before I knew it, the battle was on. Experiencing the full brute force of a Category 5 hurricane is no longer on my bucket list, for Maria came with teeth and ready to dance. At 01:16 a.m. on Wednesday, 9/20/17, the power went out. I still sit in darkness as I write this by the light of solar garden lights, a brilliant life hack by Marta Brooks that I bring in at night and put out during the day to recharge. I settled in for a few hours of rest before facing this beast, predicted at the time to make landfall in the southeast corner of our island around 5 a.m. I was awoken around 04:30 a.m. to a sound like I have never before heard. a howling, blowing wind with twisting metal in the distance, coupled with the crashing of waves almost a mile away that were as loud as cannon fire. I quickly splashed some water on my face. Gathering myself, I escaped the upstairs to my garage with access to the bunker, and I watched Maria arrive in Quebradillas, Puerto Rico, 00678. From 5 a.m. to 11 a.m., the wind and rain bands went from violent and destructive to absolutely biblical in their proportions. From 11 a.m. until about 12 noon, it was too surreal to even describe with words. It was the kind of sight and sounds I would have imagined only possible in a Hollywood movie. I watched as it grabbed sections of my neighbors' outbuildings and threw them 300 and 400 yards across the valley. I watched it push over trees at the roots, and those trees strong enough to hold root against those winds were stripped of every last leaf and their tops ripped off. Some of the rain bands were so heavy that they likened to what you see at the base of a waterfall spray in constant blowing sheets. And then, at almost exactly 12 noon, like someone flipped a switch, all was calm, creepy calm. No wind at all, with a slight drizzle of rain. I even saw a patch of blue sky and sun for almost a solid minute. I surveyed the destruction and sat, and I watched 40 to 50-foot waves roll into Playa El Tunel de Oaxaca. Our home sits on a hilltop towards the end of the Oaxaca River Valley, looking down on El Tunel, and I have never seen the waves break as big or as far out as they were during the eye of this storm. Because power and internet and cell service had all gone, I had no way of actually tracking the storm at that point, but there was no need. There was no mistaking that this was the eye. This eerie lull lasted for almost an hour and a half, and then a significant backside breeze began to push in. Now the winds were no longer coming from the ocean side along the north coast, but instead were pushing in from the island side and bringing with them lots more debris and exploding the large surf that was rolling in, creating waterspouts and heavy river surge and swell. And just as the front side had grown to gusts not to be imagined, so not to be outdone was this backside of Maria. This backside not only packed winds just as fierce, but the amount of rain coming in with it must have tripled. This trashing continued well into the darkness, and even once the wind slowed a bit around 10 p.m., the rain was relentless throughout the rest of the night. At 6 a.m. on Thursday, 9/21, I heard the neighbor calling for me to make sure I was okay. As I walked outside my bunker and I saw in the light of day the results of Maria's dance, my heart sank. I knew our island would forever be changed by this storm. It's fitting that the Spanish word for it is tormenta. At the same time, my heart was filled with joy because I was alive. I knew in that moment I was going to get to hold my wife and my daughter in my arms again. I looked back over my shoulder, almost afraid to see, and our home was 100% intact. Albeit full of water, we had been spared by the grace of God. And most were not as lucky. My amazing neighbors suffered catastrophic damages to their outbuildings and lands. They even had a car crushed, and yet the first order of business for them was checking in on me and asking if I wanted a hot cup of coffee. After spending about 4 hours clearing the water out of the downstairs, I went up on the roof and I cleared the roof drains, releasing another 2.5 feet of water from up there. I heard the neighbor struggling with a large tree that he had cut up and was trying to drag the large trunk out of the road with a chain in his truck. I threw my ratchet straps, a machete, and a handsaw, a few bottles of water into the back of the Rhino, and I set out to help clear our road. Then our barrio, as everyone came out and began tying off loose power lines, cutting and clearing debris. The neighborhood looked like a bomb went off there. Filled with adrenaline, the people came together and started working to clear the road and began going door to door to make sure that all were okay. It took the better part of 5 hours to clear 6 power poles and more than a dozen trees from our road just to gain access to the cemetery, and then out to the town, and finally the number 2. The damage along the coast on the number 2 was numbing to see. Power lines and trees strewn across the road, and the very landscape changed. New cave openings exposed due to mudslides and downed trees, and almost all non-cement houses partially or completely destroyed. Traffic lights lay littered across the area like paper cups. It was difficult to navigate around the flooded sections with traffic having to cross into oncoming lanes to pass the debris blocking the roads. I set out in search of EvyLopez, who had told me that she was staying at her aunt's house in Isabela and the barrio that she was in. When I reached the entrance to Caro Indio at 1:13, I saw it was completely blocked, like a dense forest where the road used to be. I started to get a sense of just how massive a storm this was and how widespread the effects would be felt around the island. It filled me with great sadness to see so much of my beautiful island laid to waste by Maria. After 2 unsuccessful attempts to find Evelyn, she found me. On Friday morning, 9/22/17, Evelyn came to our house and reported that she and her dogs were okay. Although the barrio she was staying at sustained heavy damages, all were okay. She helped me clean up a bit, and we watched some videos we had taken of the storm and regaled each other with tales from the storm and how we had managed. Our next great concern became the welfare of Evelyn's little wooden chalet high in the mountains of Jayuya. We packed water, food, machetes, etc., and we set out to Jayuya. As we traveled east along the northern coast, I kept expecting to just come around a corner or go over a hill and see everything okay. No, that never happened. In every town, and as far as your eye could see, there was nothing but catastrophic damages. The main highway on number 22 was only open on one side, with cars having to cross into the grass and the oncoming lanes to get around many of the obstacles. This was 2 days after the storm, and the most major highway in Puerto Rico was still barely passable. We attempted to enter the mountains through the town of Florida on Route 140 south. As all cell phone service was down, the only link to news we had was WAPA Radio, 1070 AM, for critical updates as to the state of the Union. We started hearing of entire families killed in the surge, stories of hundreds trapped, and thousands that had lost everything. From people and radio, more and more stories of total tragedy infected our ears. We heard of a father who, while watching his sister's family and house just blow off the side of the mountain, had a heart attack and died. And even more tragically, he was in an area cut off from any outside access. So 3 days later was still in this small house with his devastated family, having no way from keeping his body from the quick decay that comes with 90-degree heat. And now no shade almost anywhere in those mountains. When we reached the town of Florida, it was chaos. We asked a police officer how we could gain access to the town of Jayuya, and he just sadly shook his head and said, By helicopter is the only way. We went as far as we could, and we came across a few families that had been walking for a day and a half to come down off that mountain, as they knew it would be days before the machines could clear all the mudslides or it would be safe enough for them to even try to do so. We turned back, but about halfway back to the highway, a flooded section of road we had to cross had risen to what looked like about 300 or 400 yards of over 2 feet of water now. There were cars on both sides stuck or turning around. We knew we had to cross it or we would be stuck, and more rain was on the way. So we took out our video phones. That's all they became good for, was pictures and videos at this point. And we went for it. I hit the water at about 15 to 20 steady miles per hour, and all was going well. Water was 2/3 the way up the tires, but we were making steady forward progress. And I then saw a Jeep Cherokee, figures, stuck right in the middle of the low point, where I needed to be. He must have slowed down and allowed water to backflow into his exhaust. There's no slowing down or stopping in water that deep without some kind of exhaust snorkel. And the entire family was climbing out of that car, so I had to brake right to get around them, which was deeper waters. Both Evelyn and I became nervous enough that we dropped our video and braced for getting stuck. Amazingly, God was with us again, and we pushed right past that stuck Jeep through the deep waters. Water was at headlight level and rising over the hood with our wake swell. We rose from the water free and victorious, and then both decided that it was still just too crazy to be outside, and we needed to give them a few more days to clear these streets and for these floodwaters to recede before trying to make it back to Evelyn's house. When we got back to where Evelyn was staying in Isabella, we saw a half-destroyed wooden house with a dog tied inside and abandoned. People of the neighborhood said they were afraid to cut it loose because it was a large pit bull, and they didn't know how friendly it was going to be, given how scared and hungry and thirsty it probably was after 3 days. I threw him some hot dogs, and then I packed a bag to check on the beach dogs, our beach dogs, down at Tunel. It took me almost an hour to hike into Tunel from the entrance, climbing over all the debris and hacking through this thick brush. I met another guy who had also come to try and check on these dogs, and together we made our way to the beach. One of my favorite places on this earth was simply gone. Where once was beach was nothing but smashing surf, and our little river was now a raging torrent, carving away more and more of the area. All of the sand was now in what was the parking area and the street entrance. There were new caves exposed in the cliff face, and even less of the abandoned restaurant remained. Grand palms and royal palms just snapped in half. But amongst all this were the dogs. Amazingly, through God's grace, they survived. So we gave them some food and water and started back to the cars when we heard the warnings. Helicopters and police descended on the area with alarms and sirens. We hiked as quickly and as safely as we could to get back to the radio. The radio warned that the floodgate water control system at the reservoir, Lake Oaxaca, was damaged and had failed. And they could no longer safely guarantee its effectiveness, so as a combative measure, they were going to release this water and flood the river valley. They evacuated all of the homes in the low-lying areas along the river to the Walmart in Isabella, and they flooded the area. If any of those dogs survived that, it would truly be a miracle, because it took 2.5 days for those floodwaters to recede. We heard stories of a farm there that lost over 400 cows, and another that lost 1,400 chickens. Due to the flooded river, people in Quebradillas and Isabella were placed on a sort of house arrest. Well, they were asked to remain in their homes unless experiencing extreme emergencies. But no one followed this. Saturday and Sunday, lines at the gas stations began to grow to over 1 mile in length, and all fuel trucks were moving around under police escort only. The radio began reporting over the weekend of extreme diesel shortages, and hospitals, shelters, dialysis centers running out of power for their generators. Reports from neighbors who were able to get gas said that after a 4 to 5 hour wait, they only let you buy $10 worth. This rationing system for gas is totally counterproductive. Those same people get back online and get another $10 worth. Gas is near impossible to get. I spent the rest of the weekend glued to the radio and sharing meals with the neighbors. As we sipped the last of the coffee we had Sunday morning, we discussed how dire this situation had become. I learned that the Aguadilla airport was being closed indefinitely, as it was being used by the military now as a supply shipment point, and no commercial flights would be coming in or out. This prompted an insane rush on the San Juan airport, which at last report had over 800 people stranded trying to book flights. ATM machines out of cash, credit cards and phones not working, not being given ready access to food, water, bathrooms, and the airlines not answering any questions. I decided becoming a part of that group was not in my best interest. So on Sunday night, around 5:30 p.m., I heard what sounded like someone talking, yelling into a telephone, and the neighbor started calling out, "Tavi, claro, tiene signal, tiene claro." I came out, and he said that some people with Claro phones had a cell signal, and he pointed to a house across the valley with a guy standing outside talking on the phone. I dropped everything and ran up the road, and I begged to use the phone. I was able to have a quick 1-minute phone call to my wife and tell her that I was alive and that our home was intact. Through tears, we told each other how much we love each other, and I promised to get out of here and back to her arms as soon as I could. It was an extremely emotional call 5 days after this storm, as our dance with Maria was so much more than any of us ever could have anticipated. Our beautiful island paradise demolished, and millions of lives turned upside down. I tossed and turned most of Sunday night, dreaming of when I could be with my family again. I was awoken on Monday, 9:25, to the glorious sound of Evelyn arriving with coffee around 6:30 a.m. We caught each other up on local goings-on. We packed up some more supplies and we headed out in search of gas and to try to access Evelyn's house. This time we went via Manatí, Cialis, but the gas was still impossible to get. Even up in the remote mountain gas stations of Cialis, the lines were over 100 cars long. What we did start to see was ready access to tons of fresh water pouring from the chorros, or little waterfalls, all over. People had made bamboo shower chutes and places to wash clothing and places to load out for carry-off water. Water was everywhere. And at the very least, I knew I was going to get much better than a bucket shower this day. During Irma, I was able to just go down to the river below my house and bathe and gather water, but due to the flooding, it has been nothing more than a raging mud puddle. It was slow going and precarious, but we worked our way up the mountain. I actually got physical pains in my chest looking at one property after the next, completely destroyed. An entire mountainsides, once green and lush, now stripped, naked and brown. Entire valleys filled with mud and rock slides. Entire farms and all of their crops leveled. Everywhere we passed through, though, had one really important thing in common: the resilient spirit of these people. People working together to clear the roads, people working together to make sure that all were fed and had water, helping each other repair and mend the damages, however much they could at least. How much longer this will last, we shall see, as there have been reports of extreme violence, including shooting deaths in the metropolitan area. So, another reason I haven't just rushed over to the airport to be stuck in San Juan. Out here in the countryside, along the northern coast, and into the mountains of central Puerto Rico, there has been nothing but unity and solidarity up until this point. We arrived at the entrance to Evelyn's Road around 10 a.m. They were working to clear it still, so we grabbed our machetes and we parked the car and we began our foot hike to her house. At the end of her road was a chorro, a little waterfall that someone had put a sign that read, "This area has been declared clear and clean of any contaminants. This water is clean and good to drink, is for all and for free. Please do not block or restrict access, remove this bucket or scoop, and keep the area clean for others." I knew in that moment, at the very least, I was going to have the greatest shower of my life this day. We crossed the washed out sections of the road, mudslides and down trees everywhere, and house after house partially or completely destroyed. Somehow, and I can only attribute this to God's grace, Evelyn's home was spared. It was as if a wizard stood there and put a force field around it while the world crumbled. Her little yellow wooden house stood tall and proud amongst the wreckage. We cried and rejoiced together. She had her cistern full of water and racks of extra water. Her shop and tools and all of her artwork was completely intact. It was amazing. We cleared the standing water from inside and we opened up the windows. Evelyn set up her plants on the porch and cleaned some small debris. And we packed our backpacks as full as we could of bottled water and headed out so we could try to find some gas and get out of the mountains before the darkness set in. Back at the car in the chorro, I had what was officially the greatest shower of my life. After 5 days in the Puerto Rican sun and no shower other than bucket washing, this was simply amazing on so many levels. The water was cold and crisp and oh so refreshing. I took out my razor and I had a nice shave. A lady gave me some shampoo and I washed my hair. I felt reborn. We helped the family get their kids in and out of it and shared food with another. It was a side of the road experience like none I've ever had, and I will cherish that memory forever. After finding Evelyn's house 100% intact and that shower, the only thing that could have made this day any better would have been to find some gas. But sadly, there was no easy gas to be had. It was the same situation at night as it was early in the morning. No gas, or mile-long lines for maybe gas. When we got home last night, I began assessing the situation and how quickly it continues to deteriorate, how many supplies and inventory I have remaining, and developing a plan. I was able to siphon all the gas out of my Rhino, and I may be able to get a little more from the lawnmowers. And that's enough for one trip to San Juan, so once I go, there's no turning back. I used the rest of my reserves in search of cash. Cash is also now almost impossible to get. The banks are all either closed or the ATMs are out of cash. Credit, debit, Apple Pay, etc., all useless. It's now Tuesday, 9:26, around 10 a.m. I have used what gas I can afford to in search of cash, and I must save remaining fuel to get to the airport. I am running dangerously low on fresh drinking water. About 1 gallon left. Plenty of food and snacks, but without water. The situation's getting grim. If there wasn't enough gas, I could just drive to the mountains and get water, but that isn't feasible to use my escape gas to try to secure more water as the time has come to abandon ship. I know Evelyn is okay, and Omar came by and left a note yesterday that said he was okay. I continue to pray for Alfredo and his family, Stefan and his family, Natalia and her family, David and his family, and this entire island. Puerto Rico needs help. Pray for Puerto Rico. I would stay if I could, but the circumstances have become grave and there seems to be no end or solution in sight. Cut off from all communications, I have to trust my instincts and put faith in God to guide me. When I told Frank the captain goes down with the ship, he appropriately reminded me that no, the captain goes home to his family. Puerto Rico will survive you, Maria, because Puerto Rico is strong and Puerto Rico is forever. But her people need you, USA. They need the United States to prove that she is the greatest nation on earth and take care of her people. This could get very ugly soon if the basic needs of the people continue to be left unmet. I have not seen a single blue tarp from FEMA. I have not seen a ration. I am now going to do the best I can to secure this house and abandon ship with whatever remaining supplies I have left. I love you, Puerto Rico, but I love my wife, Alicia, and my daughter, Kathy, so much more. And they need me much more than you do. So until we meet again, please take care of yourself. Maria is a brutal reminder of just how precious and fragile this life is, and may she always remind us of what is truly important. It is now about 1 p.m. on Tuesday, 9/26, but I'm still dancing with this aftermath of Maria. The neighbors just had me over for rice and beans and roasted chicken. We enjoyed each other's company and the delicious hot meal prepared by Jenny and Anna. The old man told of his 4.5-hour wait for $10 worth of gas at 4 a.m. He told of people waiting half the night and then after getting gas going right back to the end of the line to get another $10. After doing this all night with very little sleep, they try to go to work, and if they don't run out on their commute to or from, then they get to repeat this disgusting ritual the next night. Others there were telling of their inability to sleep in this heat without any kind of fan or air conditioning. Anna and her husband expressed their frustrations over not having the energy or wanting to get too hot, attempting to continue with yard cleanup or repairs, and lack of gas made using the chainsaw only for emergencies. The daughter expressed fear over not knowing anything about the weather, and as a result, we could get slammed totally unprepared and without notice by another storm. Her children expressed their boredom over missing school and friends and not being allowed to go down to the river. The daughter who had the Claro phone arrived, and we walked around with her phone until we found a signal. And I was once again able to talk to Alicia and tell her my plan of closing up the house and heading to San Juan to become a refugee at the airport. She began searching online and calling through all the airlines as I still have no access to any money. And at this point, I'm down to my last $45 plus whatever I can raid from Kathy's change jars and piggy bank. Alicia called back and said, don't go to San Juan. They are saying all outbound flights are booked for weeks and that people have no food or water. The sad part is that I am now among those whose provisions are dangerously low. I only have about half a gallon of clean drinking water left, and only a few cereal bars and a box of cookies. I'd given away all the rest of my food, enough for at least another week of this madness, to families in extreme need that hadn't received any help. With the anticipation of my departure, now with only enough fuel for a one-way trip to San Juan and reports of booked flights, I have to weigh the decision to leave the security of my home and my neighbors and community without a clear exit against running out of water and provisions and not knowing if and when gas or cash will be available. It's a difficult choice. I also have not had a chance to talk to Evelyn again about her plans, as neither of us can afford to use the gas just to have a conversation. So for right now, I could roll the dice and drive to San Juan searching for a working ATM machine that still has some cash or some more gas along the way and join the 800 plus refugees from the storm at the airport and risk getting stuck there, or continue to wait it out here in Quebradillas with dwindling supplies and pray that they reopen the Aguadilla airport to commercial flights or make more gas available or access to cash. And then maybe I could try to use my New York State ID to play stranded tourist and get on a flight going anywhere that I could access cash and cell service. As I said, for the most part, I have seen lots of patience and the general goodness in people, but the reports of looting and violence are all coming from the metropolitan San Juan area that also happens to have the only active airport at the moment. At least there, though, I'm much more likely to be able to access cash and get a cell signal, or I could buy a Claro phone and may be able to coordinate with Alicia. However, if I can't pull off a standby, I could get stuck there with no money, no gas, no food, no water, no phone or internet. Not great options. A beautiful breeze just rolled in, so I think I'll enjoy the opportunity to take a short nap in the cool overcast and then approach this choice with a fresher mind. My nap was short-lived, as I awoke to the wonderful sound of heavy rain. I jumped up, closed up the front of the house, and positioned my buckets under the roof drains. I now again had 3 full 5-gallon buckets of water, and I was able to have another fantastic shower under the heavy pour from that drain spout. Once again, God provides. Now I'm able, again, refreshed and now truly ready for a nice nap. The finally cool temps. I was able to sleep through the night, solid 10 hours, first time since the storm. It was much needed, but instead of waking up refreshed with a clear plan, no, Maria's not done dancing with me yet. This nightmare of an aftermath continues. It is now 7 a.m. on Wednesday, 9/27, officially 1 week since our violent verse with Maria. I can say the government and the media here did a fantastic job warning the people to take Maria seriously. They mitigated the loss of life through evacuations and relentless National Weather Service warnings to all the cell phones. But this aftermath, however, it's getting the better of them. There has been no clear leadership or direction at all. At least here in the Northwest, it has been every barrio for itself. If you're blessed like I am to live in a barrio like ours, filled with caring, compassionate, truly good people and families helping one another and checking on one another, it is still extremely difficult. But so many reports are coming in from people living in fear and locking themselves in their houses as bandits literally commandeered an entire gas station with rifles. Thanks be to God, we have seen nothing remotely like that here. Even with gas lines over a mile long and people waiting over 5 hours, they are doing so with cooperation and patience. Some play music, while others enjoy a game of dominoes with friends. The day after the storm, they passed a ley seca, emergency dry law, meaning on the entire island of Puerto Rico, it is now illegal to sell, buy, or consume any alcoholic beverage. Thanks again to God, this doesn't affect me now, as there was a time that alone would have done me in. There are alcoholics who will probably die from withdrawals as their stash runs out and hospitals are all full or closed. You have to wonder who in government thought that these rationing solutions for fuel were ever going to work. Did they never study basic math? You have the same amount of available fuel, X to how many people need fuel, Y. These are constants until more fuel arrives or demand decreases due to it being satisfied. Simple. Rationing systems like odd or even days for certain areas or by license plate number, they work because they actually distribute it across a wider base. But this, you can only buy $10 shit does absolutely nothing to solve the crisis. In fact, it adds to it because those who have to commute to the San Juan area from here need much more than $10 to do so. So they will simply wait again. And this just gives the same smaller group of people the gas. The only thing it does is make them have to wait longer for it. Also, there's simply no excuse for this situation a week after the storm. I see the fuel coming in, barge after barge, and fuel trucks with police escorts delivering fuel day and night. There's so many gas stations. So what is really going on? Corruption and misappropriation and mismanagement? I suspect, but also, where is the help from the USA? 3.5 million Americans who live in Puerto Rico desperately need help. It has been a week already, and we can't get a cell signal? How long after we bombed Baghdad to pieces was the military able to communicate? Hours? Days? Over a week? I doubt it. Friends and families of American citizens not even knowing if their loved ones are alive or dead. Unacceptable. This is 2017, almost 2018 already, and you can't restore communications over a week after the storm? Why are there not military vessels along the coast able to bounce a signal? Why is the National Guard not setting up mobile communication towers and centers all over the island? If there is help coming in, then it's all staying in the metropolitan areas because we have seen nothing and are on our own out here. The only ones looking out for us is each other. If this was Florida or Texas, well, we'll just look at the federal response to Harvey and Irma, who combined did not reap half the kind of havoc and death that we are seeing here in Puerto Rico from our dance with Maria. Puerto Ricans paid for their citizenship in blood by fighting and dying in every American war. The United States government owes it to her people to take responsibility here. The only updates I can get is from local Wapa Radio 1070 AM, and it's 100% in Spanish. So, although rapidly improving, my Spanish only allows me to grab every few words or phrases, except when I'm with Evelyn or Anna, who can translate and pass along on the other news they've heard. Anna's niece has a Claro phone that once in a while has a signal, and I've been able to talk quickly with Alicia on it, but I got cut off trying to talk to her last evening, and their niece doesn't live here. So with gas the way it is, she can only come over when she's able, usually when Jenny's cooking for everyone. We all anticipated being without power and water for a long time, but both of those are very manageable if you have gas and communications. At this point, I'm still wrestling with what to do. Do I stay and pray, or do I go and fight for a flight? Alicia said she was looking at next available flight, October 7th. I don't think I can make it that long unless I get gas soon. I could use my New York State ID and try this idea of playing the role of stranded tourist and try to get on some flight as an emergency standby, but if they tell me to go spit, then I'm just a refugee trapped in the airport for a week without any food, water, money, phone, or gas. This is not a fun choice to have to make. Maybe I should just try to go see Evelyn soon and see if I can get more gas or money. And now I have to try to find food also, since I gave mine away thinking that I was going home to New York. Maria, this dance with you is getting dirty. I miss my family. And oh, fuck you, Trump. And fuck you, FEMA, for abandoning us. Maybe, 20,000 people live in the Florida Keys? You guys were there like flies on shit. 3.5 million Americans live in Puerto Rico, and where the fuck are you? Maria is still tap dancing on our heads, and we need help. This situation is getting grave, so stop reporting about it and do something in the name of all that's right. There are locals and a few conspiracy theorists here who believe Maria was a hit on Puerto Rico, a planned attack. They attribute weather manipulation, including HARP and chemtrails and cloud seeding and the like, I don't know much about it, back to the hedge funds that got burned on a $100 billion default. As it was said to me, what person or group do you know is just going to walk away from $100 billion they think is owed to them? They believe that when Obama sent PROMESA down to solve the Puerto Rican debt crisis, all they did was come in like a bunch of thugs and say, oh yeah, guess what? You're not getting paid. And what are you going to do about it? We're the USA. So go spit, because Puerto Rico is not going to pay you. They didn't restructure anything. They haven't amended the loans, nothing. Those who feel they got burned broke Puerto Rico's legs just like the mob does. You don't get to welch on $100 billion, so they got together and said, you want to live in an island paradise and not pay? They fully believe this storm was financed by those who got burned by PROMESA. One guy told me they tried with Irma and missed, as another guy argued with him that no, they took what they learned from Irma and a very active season and took advantage of what would have been a direct hit from a strong tropical storm or possibly a Cat 1 storm, and they seeded her, named the bitch Maria, and turned her loose on us. What other storm in the history of recorded weather has gone from tropical storm status to full-blown Cat 5 hurricane in less than 15 hours? I hope they aren't right, but it is so scary to think that they could be. It is now about 12:30 p.m. 1 week ago exactly, I was in the eye of Maria, and here I sit a week later in the depths of her aftermath. I have about $85 now, thanks to all the change that Chupacabra leaves for Kathy, and I drained the gas from the lawn mowers, the leaf blower, the weed whacker, all Mad Max style. I'm down to just a few cereal bars and a jar of Nutella, half a jar of peanut butter, and very little water. I have maybe 2 liters. It's so ironic that the side of a bottle of Nikini water says, the spirit of the earth. I have never in my life wanted for or worried about access to water before, and the water on this island is so plentiful, but there's no gas to get to and from it. I've been listening to what I can translate on Wapa Radio all morning, and they keep reporting about this critical situation in San Juan, and I keep thinking that this means they must reopen the Aguadilla airport at some point, but then reports will say the damage is just so widespread that the military needs 24-hour access to that airport. Well, if that's true, then where are they? You have a choice of staying put if you have enough supplies. Most people do not think a week later we still would not have any communications other than WAPA radio updates. So I have decided against going to San Juan, and I will focus my efforts on getting more gas and cash and replenishing my water and food situation. Thanks to that quick rain yesterday, I have water for washing off and flushing toilets, but I cannot drink that. So back out into this madness I go. Depending on how much gas I got from my lawnmowers, I'm going to try to get back over to where Evelyn is staying so we can regroup and she can catch me up on much of the broadcast that I just can't understand. It's now Friday around 7 a.m. Yesterday was a great day. I left the house around 5 a.m. in search of fuel, cash, and food and water. After 3 hours on a gas line that did not move and the sun started to make her presence real, I gave up. At 8 a.m., I went to Walgreens in Quebradillas, and to my amazement, they were accepting cards and iPay, Apple Pay. I was able to restock water, drinks, food, snacks, and cigarettes. I came home and there was a message from Alicia through the neighbor with multiple flight confirmation numbers that she was able to book starting as early as Saturday afternoon. I called and spoke quickly with her on the girl's phone, and she told me to let Evelyn know that her family in Rio Grande were all okay and that they had food and water and gas. I drove with my last drops of gas, fuel light on, to go see Evelyn. When I got to her aunt's house in Isabela, she was outside closing the gate with the truck loaded up on her way to come find me. Hurricane minds think alike, and we were not going to let this dance with Maria do us in. I gave her the great news about her family, and she told me that she got to speak with her daughter as well and let her know that she was okay. She also had the awesome news to report that after spending 17 hours waiting and sleeping online in the truck with her dog, she was able to get gas. And she not only got gas, she was able to pull off some trick using her ex-husband's military ID and Simi's service animal badge, and she got a full tank, 37.50, and it was spitting gas back out at her. We now had food and fuel. I drove past Playa Hobos while on search for my fuel earlier in the day, and most of the restaurants on that strip were simply gone. Oceanfront gone. Kai Bar gone. Sondido del Mar gone. Vacant lots where they once stood. Evelyn and I came back to our house in Quebradillas, and we were blessed with water. The neighbor began yelling to us, "Hay agua, David." We filled the buckets. Evelyn washed all the dirty dishes that I had soaking in a bleach bucket and did some more laundry. I then took a shower in the actual shower with water pouring from the shower head in all its glory. Rejuvenated and revived. We listened to the radio for a bit, and we went to sleep early. It is now Friday, 9:29, and we just had an entire pot of Folgers coffee. The best part of waking up was definitely Folgers in my cup. Now, with plenty of food and gas and now water, we are in great shape for whatever adventures lie before us today. Maria, we're still dancing with you, but the music is finally starting to fade. It's now late on Friday, 9:29, around 10:30 p.m. We had an amazing day. God was with us all day, without doubt. We left Quebradillas around 9 a.m. after closing down the house again, and we set out for Manatí. We attempted to get cash and gas at the Barceloneta outlets, but they were completely shut down. Then we attempted to take the number 2 from there to Manatí, but the bridge was washed out. So we tried to take another back road, and we got all turned around on a mountain pass. We came to a blocked road, and because that road was blocked and we had to turn around and take the next side road, it literally spit us out right across from the entrance to Barrio Punado on 149. When we arrived at my grandmother's house, before we could even ask if everyone was okay, or before we were asked if we were okay, Rafael's yelling down to me, "Está ocupado, la casa está ocupado, it's occupied, the house is occupied." I said, "Sí, yo sé, mi tío, dime, pero es todo bien?" "Yes, I know, my uncle told me, but is everything okay?" He complained about the difficulties of the storm, and he told me about how hard up the family staying in the house was. I told him it's very sad and the entire island is in hard times right now, but praises be to God that we are all alive. I looked over and saw my grandmother's generator sitting on the front porch, and I asked him if this was la planta de mi abuela. He said, "Oh, sí, pero no hay funcionado, no hay gasolinera en toda la isla, es muy difícil." He started asking me what Evelyn was doing. ¿Qué hace ella? Why is she doing that? Because she was setting up some water for the dogs in the shade of the driveway entrance. I told him not to worry, that thanks to God our homes were 100% intact and we wouldn't be staying, but I was glad everyone was okay. I then walked down and started wheeling the planta, the generator, out to Evelyn's truck. His daughter started screaming, "No, ¿qué tú haces? My husband just had to wait hours to put gas in that." So now all of a sudden it has gas. I thought it wasn't functioning. They came into the street and confronted us as Tonya ran back inside the house, and Evelyn told them, "Entonces sácalo la gasolinera, take your gas." They then reluctantly, through much complaining, siphoned the gas they supposedly didn't have back out of it. It was full to the brim, 5 gallons in it. Having the entire house stolen, I guess, isn't enough. He needed to lie to us, too. I'm done. Done. He will never see that machine again. We then headed off to Jayuya to button up Evelyn's house because we got reports that Puerto Rico's weather stations could no longer accurately predict the weather, but they put the entire island under a tropical storm advisory through the weekend. Oh yeah, and P.S. about our encounter with Rafael. When he complained about the difficulty in getting clean drinking water, I opened our cooler and I pulled out a bottle of water for him. In the 90-degree sun with sweat running down his brow, instead of thanking me, he felt it and said, "But it's warm." "Are you serious?" Evelyn said, "It's cold to us." And I said, it looks like you could use it. It's wet, isn't it? Done. Anyway, karma wins the day. We got to Evelyn's crazy road driveway, they call a road, and a machine had come in and cleared it enough for us to take her truck all the way in. When we got to the top of the hill at Hades Curve, we saw they didn't do a very good job with the mudslide, and a small stream was flowing through a washed-out section. We popped in the 4x4 mode, and we made that truck prove it was built Ford tough. We powered through the mud, and we made it all the way to Evelyn's house. Now that we had the truck there, we were able to load a lot more water than our packs could ever carry. In fact, we loaded an entire cooler with bottled water. We cleaned up a bit more and screwed the boards back over the windows we had removed from them, and Evelyn took some more pictures, and we set out to check on some of her friends. This young kid in a little green Honda there should have been a professional driver. We watched him power that little car right through the washed-out sections. Along the road, people made this chorro waterfall, duchas, showers, even more official. There was this private little one with a canopy over it and bamboo drilled chute that made a perfect shower, even had a scrub brush. Second best shower of my life. We then made it to the body of Evelyn's friends who, although had lost everything or sustained heavy, heavy damages, greeted us with tears and hugs and plates of hot food. Homemade pasteles from a woman whose restaurant was completely leveled, along with her home sliding off the mountain. I gave cigarettes and water to a woman who started to cry when I gave them to her. She took me across the street to her little house that was decimated by the storm. Her son sat in his room with no roof, painting a picture, no blue tarp. 8 days after the storm. His best friend and roommate at university's family owns Wi-Fi Cheese Pizza in Quebradillas. Small world. He showed me what artwork he had left that wasn't claimed by Maria and totally destroyed. They made me coffee while Evelyn visited with her friends across the street, and they told me of over a dozen deaths in their town. They said the only contact they had with the National Guard or FEMA was the distribution of military rations through the police station. Here's this family who lost almost everything. They haven't even been given a tarp, and they're offering us their rations. She gave me a beautiful owl she painted on a rock that I will cherish forever as a reminder of the general goodness and strength of the people here in Puerto Rico. On our way off the mountain, we decided that with the news of this weather coming, the weekend flight Alicia booked for me would probably get canceled, so we should return to Quebradillas now fully restocked with supplies and wait out this new storm threat. On the way out, we decided to go a different way to survey some further damages yet unseen, and by happenstance, Evelyn thought she recognized a woman standing on the side of the road next to her car trying to get his phone signal. And she yelled, "Pull over, pull over. I think I know that woman from Facebook. I mean, she doesn't know me. We've never met other than online, but she'll know me, I'm sure of it." Well, sure enough, they greeted each other with tears and hugs, and she gave us her phone to use. And with one bar of signal that worked if you stood on the bumper and held it high in the air on speakerphone, I got through to Alicia. And right there on the side of the road, she called Evelyn's daughter, Michelle, on the other line, and they confirmed flight information for both of us and the dogs right there on the side of the road. She said, "Get to that airport. This weather is not going to stop those flights. Evelyn's family's expecting you guys." God was with us again. When we got back to the highway, we continued east. Instead of driving west back towards Quebradillas, we were headed into the metropolitan area. We stopped to check on Evelyn's friend, Maribel, in Bayamon, and after a quick and joyful reunion, we left and went to Evelyn's aunt's house. She showed them pictures of their home in Isabela, and we enjoyed hot coffee and biscuits. On the way back to Maribel's house to spend the night before our jaunt to the airport, we spotted a gas station with a relatively short line, only about 20 cars. When we got in line, we were told by the car in front of us that he was the last car. We sadly rolled on. At the very next gas station, they had the entrance blocked by a wrecker, but we saw that they were still pumping. We begged them to add us, and they did. The workers were all drinking cold beer as the government had lifted the ley seca today, so they were all celebrating. Not only did they let us get gas, but they let us fill the tank and the 5-gallon gas can. We arrived back at Maribel's around 11 p.m. and she was overjoyed that we had returned. We set up the planta generator and turned on the lights and a large fan. Evelyn and Maribel regaled each other with tales from the week and news that they had heard. Maribel made a delicious hot meal, and we all enjoyed arroz con salchichón y habichuelas con tostada. And I caught up this dance with Maria. I thought of how blessed and loved we are. As the phone signal returned, we were inundated with text messages, Facebook messages, WhatsApp messages, voicemails, etc., expressing love and concern. We said a beautiful grace in Spanish and English and expressed our gratitude for this moment and said a prayer for all of Puerto Rico. In the morning, I rise early with Tania, Evelyn's dog, in tow to the airport to escape this Maria madness. So many others here will be forced to continue to dance with. Maribel finished her perfect hot meal off with hot cups of coffee and Belvita cookies. God is good. Be with me in the morning, God, and deliver me safely to my family, I pray. It has been a long dance with Maria, and I am ready to be done. Saturday, September 30th. We awoke early in the morning around 6 a.m. Maribel made hot coffee while Evelyn walked the dogs, and I packed up what I was taking and gave the rest of my supplies and food to Evelyn and Maribel. During coffee, we spoke about how so many people who are getting the military rations don't even know how to read English, so they're trying to trade them because they don't know what they are. Spaghetti sauce, what's that? They don't want to open it and waste anything, but there's no help. Those who we meet who did have rations got them from the police, not from FEMA or from the military. We left for PetSmart in search of a dog bag for Tania. 45 minutes before the store opened, there was a line forming. By the time they opened, the line was over 50 people long. At PetSmart. We looked across the parking lot, and there was a line at the pharmacy that was over 100 people long waiting for medicine, and lines at gas stations and banks with hundreds and hundreds of people at 8 o'clock in the morning. PetSmart did not have a bag for Tania, but they told us that the airlines were all making exceptions due to the critical situations. But airlines lie and cheat just like they do when there isn't an emergency. So Maribel gave me a beautiful wooden carving of St. Jude, the patron saint of lost causes, and I asked for this little statue's help. And a kind woman behind the counter at the airline said she could sell me one for $100. They made me buy this cheap shit bag that says Southwest on it, and it was too small for Tania. They said, well, that's all we have, so if you can't get her in to fit in there, then she can't go. That's it. So we bought their stupid bag, and I spent 15 minutes trying to coax, lure, trick, connive, convince, bribe, and then finally force poor Tania into this bullshit bag to make it through. We officially have boarding passes and are through security waiting at the gate for a flight to Florida scheduled to depart in about 4.5 hours. Remind me that even after a Category 5 hurricane and a national state of emergency, never to listen to my wife about when to get to the airport. I am here so too early. There is no air conditioning at all in the main terminals. It has to be over 100 degrees. And the gates are somehow pumping out cold air. The airlines and duty-free shops are accepting credit and debit cards for things like $100 dog bags, but none of the food vendors or convenience kiosks are? They're still charging full retard prices for shitty airport food people don't have money for, while people sit dripping in sweat. I did see some women handing out bottled water. Did they work for the airlines? No. Did they work for FEMA? No. Must have been the National Guard, right? No. Nuns. Catholic nuns were handing out crackers and water. Nuns. So you see, again, it is the people looking out for each other here. I have no phone signal, so I still, 12 days later, can't even text or call Evelyn or Alicia and let them know that we're checked in.
Tania's being very good considering her circumstances, so I bought a $5 empanada and I gave her a little crust. The lack of help here is astounding. I can count on one hand the amount of anything other than Puerto Rican police I've seen helping anyone or doing anything. We hear reports of hundreds of containers being held at the port to clear customs or some truck driver nonsense. There's hundreds of volunteers. There's people looking to help. We hear other stories of volunteers, including over 60 firefighters from California who aren't being told what to do. So they're in the Sheridan awaiting leadership. Where is the leadership? Where is the fake orange clown? Trump, you and your people are fools. You could have guaranteed yourself the White House for re-election if you would have stepped up and done the right thing here in Puerto Rico and by her people. Every Puerto Rican in New York, Florida, California, Texas, Chicago, the list goes on, would have voted for you. Even the ones that hate you would have recognized real leadership. They crave direction and guidance and reassurance. We did more for Haiti in a less destructive storm than we did for 3.5 million Americans who identify as Puerto Rican and live on this island as full-blooded American citizens. While waiting online at PetSmart this morning, I was able to speak with Mike Canister at LDI quickly and let him know that our Puerto Rico office will survive, but is closed indefinitely right now. I then spoke quickly with Omar Ocasio, who is now in the hospital with infection, and he let me know that his cousin David Ocasio also had some complications with his surgery and has a bone infection and internal bleeding. I pray for both of them and their families. I just found out that they put the wrong information on my boarding pass, so we're on the completely wrong side of the airport. Good thing I double-checked. But plus side bonus, God again is good, because on this almost abandoned terminal, complete with broken windows, it is so much quieter. And there's plenty of room for Tania and I to chill. So I let her out of that ridiculous bag, and she's so happy to be free and people watching, getting lots of attention from kids and the elderly. I guess she really is a service animal, Evelyn. Makes friends with everyone, even TSA. We found an ATM machine with some cash. I pulled out a few dollars and grabbed some things for the kids. I ran into the woman we met on the side of the road last night that Evelyn recognized from Facebook. We hugged and thanked God that we had met the way we did and that we had made it to the airport. I told her the good news of Evelyn and I being able to get the $40 in gas and set up the generator. I gave her and her husband a business card, and we agreed to stay in touch. After all the usual chaos at the airport in San Juan, there's a general sadness among those not leaving by choice, but by Maria's wrath. On the way over to the airport, we went past Alfredo's house and saw that he and his family are okay. Gave his wife a cigarette, and she did a happy dance after 5 days without one. They said their house flooded twice with sewer water, and it was very, very scary, and they are okay and doing well, home intact. They have water back. I invited them to come take a break in New York, and they said they may actually do that as things here have just been so crazy. I now have less than 2 hours until boarding. Finally, Maria, our dance is coming to an end. The effects across our island will be seen for years, and the memory of this dance with you will last a lifetime. It will be remembered for generations. Maria, sometimes the music was loud and angry, and other times it slowed to a difficult and depressing pace. But love and unity and community win the day. The spirit of the people of Puerto Rico will overcome these adversities created by you, and we will rebuild their homes and their businesses destroyed by you, Maria. Maria más fuerte de todo el mundo, Maria se fue. Goodbye, Maria. Maria, you left. I hope I never see you again. I'm so tired of dancing with you. God, help my island. Please help my island move past you. Help our leaders lead and show them the wisdom of your goodness through their working together through and with her people. My life is forever changed by you, Maria. Gracias por mi vida, Dios. Thank you for my life, dear God. Evelyn, get well. Get out of that hospital and come here. Get your dog. Do something to help Puerto Rico.